Okay, hi. Um, Welcome back to a Twinflame Path. I'm Jacqueline, and I hope that you're doing well. Um, I know that it's been a long time since I've uploaded a video, and that leads me into what I've been doing. I was working on things for a client, which is very cool, but it kind of takes me away from here. And during that time, which was about 4 days ago, um, maybe 5, maybe 6, don't know, but we're somewhere in that time frame, and that's just entirely too long. So regardless of what the situation is, I don't plan on that happening again. But I will say what else I did during that time, which was set up a Patreon account, which is also titled Twin Flame Path. Um, yeah, on the Patreon account, it'll keep me here, and that's where I prefer to be. And although I do like this grainy situation, um, I'm wanting a more of a home studio situation. Nothing too fancy, but I would like to have more clarity in my videos. And even the camera that you saw me using, or you saw the result of me using or my using in the last video, it's HD, but it's not quite HD. This is an HD camera, but the output really isn't HD. And the other one had a whirring kind of situation in the audio. So even though the film quality was better, the audio quality diminished. So I decided to come back to home. Uh, so, you know, that's what Patreon is set up for. And it's set up pretty comprehensively, like just straight pledges. And I have other ideas, just basically a low budget set and some low medium budget lighting. And I feel like that will be less of a distraction than the old school feel. But I'm okay with the old school feel, so we're going to roll with what we have. So you got to use what you have to work with, right? So I set that up, but also the Twitter page is set up. So a Twin Flame Path um, on Twitter, at a Twin Flame Path is now up and running. So that should be kind of fun. The Facebook page is there, but um, that's going to be mainly for the work maybe of others or sharing other people's work. But I think Twitter is going to be more of my preferred mode of real-time updates and niblets. So with that being said, right now we are going to have a bit of a reading. I was going to go through my list of upcoming topics, and something told me, hey, let's go for a reading this time. So that's what we're going to do. And that's also been kind of why I've been away. I won't say it's all because of the client, the work that I'm doing for the client, because that's been really enjoyable. It's like artistic work, digital work, and stuff I really enjoy. But the twin flame situation has been what has really put me under. Um, if you've noticed, there's been a purge going on, and I experienced that massively. I'll tell you a little bit about it, and maybe it'll compare to your experience. But what I was feeling was, I guess, the extreme urge to just meditate. And I meditated a lot. And that led to these dream sequences that would ultimately lead to a purging. They would be reminders of the past and kind of interactions with people who I guess I let go of but wanted to reconnect now? And answer is still no, but more truth was revealed during those dream sequences. And I would wake up and just be exhausted, and I would have to take a nap from napping, I would have to recover. And that happened day after day for about a week. So, it was wild, there were some deep things happening. So, with your twin flame path, no pun intended, I guess, but with your twin flame relationship, that's why I'm always like all about the ascension situation, because meditation gets deeper and it becomes easier, and it leads to a lot of truths. I had truths about past lives, nations that I didn't realize I was part of a bloodline of. I knew that there was a lot more to learn, but I started having these interactions with people, whether they're just me watching their YouTube videos or, remembering things, like childhood friends and stuff like that. And then connections started to be made. And then through dreams and meditation, there was realization of, you guys are closer tied than you realized. And that led to like a wave of this hint being in my soul my whole life, or at least from what I can remember, and that, I'll give an example. There's a certain country that I had encounters with, like in my mind learning about it initially, it's like, oh, that place seems kind of cool. And then I learned more. And then I met someone from that place. And then, she and I became friends. And then I would meet other people from that place. And it was just like, how do we know each other? How come this keeps happening? And then it was kind of like in, the spirit world, it was like, your connection is deeper than just has happenly running into people, in this time and space. And that happens with your twin flame. I will say, you'll have these inklings in your soul. And one way that I found out how to make sure that I pay attention to them is when I have them and my initial reaction is no. And these things will be like, they'll seem relatively minor, but when in relation to your twin flame, it'll be something like good, like a little more insight into who they are as a person, their inner workings. And that's not necessarily something I say no to, but the no can be translated into that's not important, or that can't be related to them, and stuff like that. And then something will happen between you guys later, and it'll be brought up in your soul, in your spirit, that time where you had that inkling. And sometimes these things happen over and over. Like, I'm getting a little bit off of the reading, but this is all part of it, so bear with me, and I hope it's helpful. But it'll happen over and over again. And what I've learned is that it'll happen on both sides. And I learned that by assuming that everything that needed to be known was known. But then when I experienced things that I needed to pay attention to, and then I learned, and then later on I learned it in a more complex way, I got reminded of how that works for me. And then I take that and I just remind myself that it could be how it works for him. Even though, like, I don't know fully, I know our experiences are similar, but his are on the male side, mine are more on the female side. And culturally, we have different ways of experiencing things. We are not of the same culture, but we are. Like out here, we're not of the same culture, like the land that's outside. But in our souls, we very much are. Like our constitution between one another is the same. And so it's fun learning the different ways that the other learns and the ways that they've experienced things and why. So during this time of purging, purging often comes with learning and realizations. So along with the realizations of like more about your past and your background and things like that, you can have realizations of how things were for you guys before you incarnated to this time and place. I believe that's another aspect of the most current purge that we, or most of us, or some of us, I think most of us have experienced. Whether we define it that way or not, we experienced more of the things that made up or went along with our relationship before this current incarnation. We made decisions together, but also as individuals. And I think this past purging, we began to understand why we made those decisions then, which led to a lot of why we make or have made a lot of the decisions that we have made in this incarnation. I believe this past week or so, I'd like to say maybe for week ending January 14th of 2018, that who we are became more defined. Not necessarily, maybe, but not necessarily in technical or like hard copy form, but like, why do I have this aspect? I think we all learned a little bit more about the details of our characteristics. I think we learned why certain things make us insecure or have made us insecure. I believe that a lot of these things are now things of the past or are becoming things of the past. I believe with this purging, there was also a lot of letting go of fear, along with that New Year's shift that I spoke about before. During that time and at the end of 2017, our souls accelerated past even where our present minds seemed to be. They caught up for us, and it brought us to this point of growing up, I guess, really quickly, or becoming stronger really quickly. Not like you weren't growing up or becoming stronger before, but it's like, like the last like 10 meters of like a 100-meter race. Like the last few feet of the race being like the hardest. Like we got through that part. So with that happening during that time, and you can see that reading video, you come to this point now, and I believe what it's led us to do is continue to leave those associated things in the past, But in turn, leaving those things in the past seem to have made room for things that have led us to understanding more of who we are. It's turning out that 2018 is a year of discovery because of new room being made. Like, for example, like spring cleaning, it's not necessarily that you're getting rid of old things to make room for new ones. You're getting rid of what's not serving you, what you don't need, what's become old, what's become worn out, what's ultimately getting in the way. When you cut those things off, people included, you can make room to better know the things that you have decided to keep, the things that are useful. And I think that we are at the tip of the iceberg right now, starting out this year. I believe in the past week it kind of formed the pace. Without fear, you're inviting more bountiful energy into your space. Without baggage of people who may not be good for you to have around, you're letting go of that part of you that was a victim. And I'm not saying that you're the kind of person that's feeling sorry for themselves, but being at the butt end of somebody's energy, it's not really doing too much for you. It is that in the light that you're learning, but now it's kind of that season of like reaping the benefits and sowing. Like, I guess the seeds were sown during those times of experiences that may have been good or bad or both, ultimately both. But now the reaping is starting to come in, and that's part of that purge, the spring cleaning. You can wear nicer clothes because you got rid of the ones that you thought that you had to wear because you had them, but they weren't so nice. You have less, but that means that you can take care of them better. You can clean the space around them better because there's more space in which to move. Your mental environment is cleaner because your eyes are seeing less clutter. It's the same for your soul. So coming up, I'm not going into like this week, like the newspaper, like horoscope things, like watch out for, wooden doors this week, no, I'm not really going into that. But I think, and I'm going to be taking my own advice, is just to carry on, because what I noticed this past week is that I felt, let me take a sip of tea here now. I'm not going to spill the tea, but I will take a sip of the tea. But what I noticed this past week are old habits trying to resurface. And I believe that's part of that whole dreamscape situation, because it was like old things that were trying to resurface. I'm like, I haven't even thought about this in years. Like, I wouldn't have even remembered that if it wasn't for this dream. And I believe that a lot of us had these past experiences this past week in our own regard. But, I felt my own tendencies of fear and, doubt and things like that resurfacing. Like, I haven't become a pro at these things just yet. And I'm making a longer video, I think, because it'll make up for this gap of none. But yeah, like this new feeling, it's kind of like you got the training wheels off, still like, whoa, like that scene in Napoleon Dynamite where either Kip or Napoleon are trying to change gears, and it gets all like shaky and stuff. Like it's kind of like that on the bike, it's like you haven't mastered it fully, so the old habits are like waiting behind like that door that was just closed. um Carry the momentum forward in the next week, in the next hour, becoming a pro. I think that's gonna be the title, at least of this quarter of the year, this season, is becoming a pro. um and as that evolves, I think we'll continue to have a lot to look forward to. Um, but, you know, for the here and now, it's be okay with being a pro, uh, and see what those new and good feelings can, see how far they can go. Let's see how far we can take it. Because we have definitely decided to stay. And now that we're here, let's just do our best, right? So, on that note, I will bid you farewell and wish you well in the meantime, and look forward to seeing you soon. And take care in the meanwhile. Bye.